Toby was no ordinary cat. He was a curious, intelligent creature with a heart as big as the moon. He loved exploring the cozy corners of his home, chasing sunbeams and napping in the softest spots. But most of all, he loved his family. Toby's home was a haven of comfort and intrigue. It was a cozy little house, not too big, not too small, perfect for a curious cat like him. The soft, warm glow of the living room, where he loved to curl up on the armchair, was his favorite spot. The large windows let in plenty of sunlight, casting dancing shadows that he'd chase for hours. The armchair, a worn plush seat, was Toby's throne. Its soft cushions, worn smooth from years of use, provided the perfect perch for observing the world. He'd curl up there, his tail wrapped around his paws, and watch the world go by. The large windows, framed by flowing curtains, offered a view of the garden. Sunlight streamed through, dappling the floor with golden patches. Toby would often chase these sunbeams, his playful shadow dancing alongside him. The living room, with its soft, muted tones and comforting scents, was the heart of the home. It was a place of warmth, laughter, and endless cuddles. The living room walls were a gallery of love and memories. Family portraits, capturing moments of joy and laughter, hung alongside playful sketches of Toby. His parents, ever proud, had framed his artwork, showcasing his creativity and talent. Each picture told a story, a testament to the love and care that surrounded him. The room was a reflection of his family's bond, a warm and inviting space filled with love and cherished memories. He adored the quiet corners, the hidden nooks under the furniture, and the high shelves where he could perch and survey his kingdom. The soft, thick carpets were perfect for a good roll, and the gentle hum of the refrigerator was a soothing lullaby. Every creak and crack of the old house held a secret, a mystery waiting to be uncovered. One day, a purring bundle of joy arrived at their doorstep. A tiny orange kitten named Garfield. Toby was instantly smitten. He watched the little one with wide, curious eyes, his heart filled with a warmth he'd never felt before. The day Garfield arrived was a whirlwind of excitement. A small cardboard carrier, adorned with a tiny, curious face, was placed gently on the living room floor. As the carrier was opened, a tiny, orange kitten, no bigger than a teacup, emerged. Its tiny paws, soft as velvet, tentatively touched the cool hardwood floor. Toby's eyes widened with astonishment. He'd never seen anything so small and adorable. A surge of protective instinct washed over him. He approached the kitten cautiously, his tail twitching with curiosity. As he got closer, Garfield let out a tiny, playful meow. Toby's heart melted. He knew instantly that this little creature would be his best friend. He began to groom Garfield, a gentle gesture of affection, a sign of acceptance. He showed Garfield around the house, introducing him to his favorite napping spots and play areas. He even shared his favorite toy, a fuzzy mouse, with his new brother. Toby's parents watched the interaction with warm smiles. They were overjoyed to see their older cat so welcoming and loving towards his new sibling. They knew that Toby would be a wonderful brother to Garfield. They showered both kittens with affection, offering them treats and gentle pets. The arrival of Garfield had brought a new wave of joy and warmth to their home. As Garfield grew, so did their bond. They played together for hours, chasing each other through the house, wrestling, and tumbling. They would often curl up together for a nap, their tiny bodies intertwined. Their days were filled with endless fun and playful antics. They'd chase each other through the house, their tiny paws padding across the floor, a blur of orange and black fur. They'd wrestle and tumble, their playful growls echoing through the halls. Garfield, with his boundless energy, would often dart around corners, surprising Toby with sudden attacks. Sometimes, a hint of sibling rivalry would creep in. Toby, being the older brother, would occasionally snatch Garfield's toys, his larger paws easily overpowering the smaller kitten. Garfield, though frustrated, would let out a tiny meow, his big round eyes pleading for his toy back. During these moments, their parents would gently intervene. They'd explain to Toby the importance of sharing and the feelings of his little brother. They'd reassure Garfield that he was loved just as much, if not more, than his older brother. They'd often shower both kittens with affection, cuddling them close and whispering sweet nothings. As the day drew to a close, the two brothers would often curl up together for a nap, their tiny bodies intertwined, a picture of perfect harmony. Their parents would watch them with soft smiles, their hearts filled with warmth. The gentle rise and fall of their chests, the soft purrs, and the warmth of their bodies created a sense of peace and contentment. Some days, before settling down for their nap, Toby and Garfield would often engage in playful acrobatics on their bed. They'd roll around, their tiny bodies tumbling over each other, their playful meows filling the air. They'd leap and pounce, their paws batting at each other with playful aggression. Sometimes, they'd chase imaginary mice, their eyes wide with excitement. They'd also enjoy playing with their toys on the bed. They'd bat at a feather toy, sending it flying across the room. They'd wrestle with a stuffed mouse, their tiny jaws clamping down on its soft fur. And they'd pounce on a ball of yarn, their claws playfully tugging at it. As they played, their parents would watch them with amusement, their hearts filled with love and joy. As their eyelids grew heavy, their eyes would begin to droop, their pupils dilating with sleepiness. Their playful antics would gradually slow down, their meows becoming softer and more infrequent. They'd yawn, their tiny mouths stretching wide, revealing their pink tongues. Eventually, their playful energy would wane, and they'd settle down, their bodies growing still. Their little paws would twitch occasionally, as if they were still chasing each other in their dreams. Sometimes Garfield would snuggle closer to Toby, seeking comfort in his warmth. Toby, in turn, would wrap his tail around his little brother, a silent gesture of protection. Their parents would capture these precious moments, taking photos and videos to cherish forever. As Garfield grew, so did the collection of photographs adorning the living room walls. New pictures were added, capturing the mischievous antics of the orange kitten. There were photos of him chasing a ball of yarn, napping in a sunbeam, and cuddling with Toby. And of course, there were plenty of pictures of the two brothers together, their playful bond evident in every shot. The living room, once a gallery of Toby's adventures, now celebrated the love and joy that filled their home. It was a space where the past, present, and future intertwined, a testament to the enduring power of family. Toby's room was a cozy haven, a world of imagination and dreams. The walls were adorned with colorful posters of his favorite heroes and whimsical paintings he'd created. A soft, plush rug covered the floor, perfect for playful wrestling matches with Garfield. Atop his bed, a collection of stuffed animals, each with a unique story, watched over him. Garfield's room, though smaller, was equally charming. It was a world of orange and sunshine, filled with toys and treats. A cat tree, a favorite climbing spot, stood tall in the corner, overlooking the room. A cozy cat bed, nestled under a window, was his preferred napping spot. Both rooms, filled with love and care, were a testament to the bond between the brothers and their parents. Their dining room was a place of warmth and laughter, a space where families gathered to share meals and stories. A large wooden table, worn smooth from years of use, dominated the room. Surrounding it were comfortable chairs, each with its own unique character. A chandelier, a sparkling cascade of crystal, hung from the ceiling, casting a soft, warm glow over the room. Among the framed photographs in their dining room, there were several featuring Toby and Garfield. There were candid shots of them playing together, their tiny bodies tangled in a playful tussle. There were portraits of them, posed perfectly, their eyes sparkling with curiosity. And there were heartwarming images of them curled up together, fast asleep, their bond evident in their peaceful slumber. Every night, as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the room, Toby and Garfield would embark on their nightly ritual. First, it was bath time. They'd prance into the bathroom, their little paws padding across the tiles. The shower would be turned on, and as the warm water cascaded down, they'd playfully splash each other, their tiny meows filling the air with merriment. Once clean and dry, they'd gather by the window, their tiny bodies pressed against the glass. They'd gaze up at the moon, a silvery orb hanging high in the starry sky. Their eyes would widen with wonder as they imagined the moon as a giant, playful ball. Next came the task of brushing their teeth. Garfield, however, was not a fan of the minty toothpaste. He'd make faces and try to wiggle away, his little tongue darting out to taste the foamy substance. Toby, ever the patient teacher, would demonstrate the correct way to brush his teeth. He'd hold his toothbrush gently, making sure to reach every nook and cranny. Garfield, intrigued by his brother's technique, would try to imitate him. Though his efforts were often clumsy, he'd eventually manage to brush his teeth, albeit with a few missed spots. Their parents watched with pride as Toby took on the role of the elder brother, guiding and caring for his younger sibling. They knew that Toby would always be there to look after Garfield, ensuring that he grew up happy and healthy. As bedtime approached, they'd try their best to delay it. They'd race around the room, their little paws tapping against the floor. They'd refuse to put on their pajamas, giggling as their parents chased them around the bed. Finally, as exhaustion began to set in, they'd settle down. Toby, the ever-gentle brother, would give Garfield a tender kiss on the forehead. It was their nightly promise, a silent vow of love and protection. As the room grew darker, a soft glow would emanate from the bedside lamp. Their parents would settle down on the bed, drawing their children close. The soft rustling of pages would fill the air as they began to read aloud. Their voices, gentle and soothing, would weave tales of brave knights, wise owls, and mischievous kittens. Toby and Garfield would listen intently, their sleepy eyes wide with wonder. They'd giggle at the funny parts, their little bodies wiggling with delight. Sometimes, they'd interrupt the story with curious questions, their innocent voices filled with wonder. On other nights, Their parents would play their favorite lullaby. The soft melody would fill the room, creating a serene atmosphere. The kittens would curl up together, their tiny bodies finding comfort in each other's warmth. As the music played, their eyelids would grow heavy, and they'd drift off to sleep, their dreams filled with the magic of the night. And as they drifted off to sleep, the moon watched over them, casting a soft glow on their peaceful slumber. Before drifting off to sleep, Toby would give Garfield a gentle kiss on the forehead. It was their special ritual, a silent promise of love and protection. Every morning, as the first rays of sunlight peeked through the curtains, Toby would wake Garfield with a soft nudge and another kiss. Morning arrived, and with it, the daily ritual of brushing teeth. As the first rays of sunlight peeked through the curtains, Toby and Garfield would emerge from their slumber, their eyes still heavy with sleep. Their parents would gently coax them to the bathroom, where the smell of minty toothpaste filled the air. Toby, always eager to start the day, would grab his toothbrush and toothpaste and begin to brush enthusiastically. Garfield, however, would often resist, his little paws trying to escape the toothbrush's grasp. Toby, ever the patient brother, would gently guide Garfield's paws, demonstrating the proper technique. With each brushstroke, Garfield would slowly begin to relax, his resistance fading away. Soon, the two brothers would be brushing their teeth together, a harmonious duo. After their morning toothbrushing routine, the two brothers were ready to embark on a new day of adventures. Their first stop was the kitchen, where the tantalizing aroma of breakfast wafted through the air. Their parents had prepared a delicious meal of warm milk and crunchy cat treats. The brothers would eagerly lap up their breakfast, their purrs growing louder with each bite. Once they had satisfied their appetites, it was time for some playtime. They'd race through the house, chasing each other up and down the stairs. They'd leap onto furniture, their claws clicking against the upholstery. And they'd pounce on each other, their playful wrestling matches filling the air with joyful meows. After a morning of fun and games, the brothers would often retreat to their favorite napping spot. They'd curl up together on a soft blanket, their bodies intertwined. The gentle rhythm of their breathing and the soft purrs filled the room with a sense of peace and contentment. Before noon, Toby and Garfield would often enjoy a leisurely morning. After their breakfast and a bit of playtime, they'd often curl up together for a morning nap. Their tiny bodies would intertwine, their breathing soft and rhythmic. Sometimes, they'd wake up to the sound of birds chirping outside the window. Their curiosity piqued. They'd then spend a few moments watching the birds, their eyes following their flight paths. If the weather was nice, they might venture outside to explore the garden. The fresh air and the warm sunlight invigorated their spirits. They'd dart through the flower beds, their tiny paws leaving delicate imprints on the soft soil. The vibrant colors of the flowers captivated their attention, and they'd often pause to sniff and admire them. As they explored, they'd encounter a variety of creatures. Butterflies, with their colorful wings, would flutter by, tempting the kittens to chase. Tiny insects, scurrying across the ground, would spark their hunting instincts. They'd pounce and swat, their playful energy filling the garden with excitement. Sometimes they'd simply bask in the warm sunlight, their fur soaking up the heat. They'd find a sunny spot, curl up together, and drift off into a peaceful slumber. The gentle breeze and the soft chirping of birds created a soothing lullaby, lulling them into a deep sleep. When they were not chasing butterflies or napping in the sun, They'd often sit quietly, taking in the sights and sounds of nature. They'd watch as birds flitted from branch to branch, their songs filling the air. They'd observe the bees as they buzzed from flower to flower, collecting pollen. These quiet moments, filled with wonder and tranquility, were a cherished part of their daily routine. As the morning wore on, the gentle rumble of their stomachs signaled that it was time for lunch. Their parents would prepare a delicious meal of wet food, a combination of savory flavors and tender textures. The aroma of food would fill the air, enticing Toby and Garfield to the kitchen. They would gather around their bowls, their whiskers twitching with anticipation. With each spoonful, they'd savor the taste, their eyes closed in pure bliss. The meal would be accompanied by a refreshing drink of water, which they'd lap up eagerly. After lunch, Toby and Garfield would often retreat to a quiet spot for a post-meal nap. They'd curl up together, their bodies warm and content. The gentle hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the clock would lull them into a peaceful slumber. When they awoke, they'd be ready to embark on another round of playtime. They'd race through the house, pounce on each other, and chase imaginary prey. The afternoon was filled with endless possibilities, and Toby and Garfield were eager to explore them all. As the afternoon wore on, they might explore the garden, chasing butterflies and birds. They'd bask in the warm sunlight, their fur glowing in the golden rays. Or they might simply lounge on a windowsill, watching the world go by. No matter what they did, the brothers always found a way to fill their days with joy and wonder. As the afternoon wore on, Toby and Garfield would often find themselves drawn to the garden. The warm sunlight and the fresh air were irresistible. They'd dart through the flower beds, their tiny paws leaving delicate imprints on the soft soil. The vibrant colors of the flowers captivated their attention, and they'd often pause to sniff and admire them. If they weren't chasing butterflies, Toby and Garfield might spend their time exploring the nooks and crannies of the garden. They'd peer under leaves, climb up plants, and investigate every hidden corner. They might also spend time watching birds, their eyes following the birds' flight paths. Sometimes, they'd simply bask in the warm sunlight, their fur glowing in the golden rays. They'd curl up together, their bodies intertwined, and drift off into a peaceful slumber. The gentle breeze and the soft chirping of birds would create a soothing atmosphere, lulling them into a deep sleep. After their afternoon nap, Toby and Garfield would often return to the garden to watch the sunset. They'd find a cozy spot on the windowsill, their paws curled up beneath them. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, they would watch in awe. The tranquility of the moment would fill them with a sense of peace and wonder. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the garden, Toby and Garfield would return indoors, ready for their evening routine. Their parents would greet them with warm smiles, eager to spend some quality time with their furry companions. Dinner time was a sacred ritual for Toby and Garfield. Their parents would carefully prepare their meals, ensuring a perfect balance of taste and nutrition. The aroma of wet food, with its tantalizing blend of savory scents, would fill the air, awakening their feline senses. As their bowls were placed down, Toby and Garfield would approach with cautious excitement. They'd circle the bowls, their whiskers twitching as they assessed the meal. With a swift movement, they'd begin to devour the food, their tongues lapping up the delicious morsels. The wet food, with its smooth texture and rich flavor, was a favorite among the brothers. They'd savor each bite, their eyes half closed in contentment. The occasional crunch of a kibble added a textural contrast to the meal, providing a satisfying crunch. Sometimes, their parents would add a special treat to their dinner, such as a spoonful of tuna or a sprinkle of catnip. These little surprises would always bring a spark of joy to their mealtime. After dinner, they'd often clean their bowls with their tongues, ensuring that not a single morsel was wasted. As they finished their meal, they'd give their parents a contented purr, a sign of their appreciation for the delicious feast. Bath time was always an adventure for Toby and Garfield. Their parents would fill a small tub with warm water and gentle cat shampoo. As soon as they caught sight of the tub, their eyes would widen with curiosity and excitement. Once they were placed in the water, the fun would begin. They'd splash and play, sending water droplets flying in all directions. Their little paws would paddle furiously, creating tiny waves. Their parents would gently wash their fur, massaging their bodies and soothing their senses. Garfield, being the more adventurous and mischievous of the two, often turned bath time into a chaotic spectacle. As soon as he was placed in the water, he would squirm and wriggle, trying to escape the soapy suds. His tiny paws would paddle frantically, sending water splashing in all directions. Toby, ever the patient and understanding brother, would try to calm Garfield down. He would gently stroke his fur, offering words of comfort. Sometimes, he would even try to distract Garfield by playing with a toy or making funny faces. Despite Toby's best efforts, Garfield would continue to resist the bath. He'd arch his back, hiss, and even try to bite. Their parents would have to hold him firmly, while gently washing his fur. Even though Garfield was a handful during bath time, he would eventually succumb to fatigue and allow his parents to finish cleaning him. Once he was clean and dry, he'd often snuggle up to Toby, seeking comfort and warmth. Despite the initial struggle, bath time was an important part of their routine. It helped to keep them clean and healthy, and it also strengthened the bond between the two brothers. After their bath, they'd be wrapped in warm towels and dried gently. They'd shake themselves dry, sending water droplets flying. Their parents would then brush their fur, removing any loose hair and tangles. Once they were clean and well-fed, it was time for some quiet relaxation. They'd curl up on the couch, their bodies pressed together. Sometimes, they'd watch a cat show on TV, their eyes wide with fascination as they watched other cats play and pounce. Before bedtime, their parents would often read them a bedtime story. The soft, soothing voice of their parents would lull them into a state of calm, preparing them for sleep. As the story ended, they'd drift off to sleep, their bodies warm and content. As the night deepened, the house would grow quiet. Toby and Garfield, nestled together in their bed, would drift off into a peaceful slumber, dreaming of the adventures that awaited them the next day. One evening, as the first stars began to twinkle in the sky, Toby and Garfield were getting ready for bed. As their parents tucked them in, a quiet moment passed between the two brothers. Garfield, his eyes sparkling with mischief, turned to Toby. "Toby," he meowed softly, his voice filled with a sense of wonder. "I'm so lucky to have you as a brother." His small orange face was tilted upwards, a look of pure adoration in his eyes. Toby's heart swelled with pride. He felt a warmth spreading through his chest, a feeling of love and contentment. He leaned in, nuzzling his brother's soft fur. "I'm lucky to have you too, Garfield," he replied, his voice gentle and reassuring. In that moment, a silent bond passed between them, a bond forged in play, shared meals, and countless adventures. They knew that they would always be there for each other, no matter what. As they drifted off to sleep, the image of their brother's loving gaze lingered in their minds. It was a comforting thought, a reminder of the love and affection that surrounded them. A warm glow filled the room. The bond between the two brothers was as strong as ever, a love that would last a lifetime.